professor. I know he's an academician. I respect him as a professor. But the reality on the ground, vitu ni tofauti. And I dare Professor Kibutha Kibwana, and fortunately both are professors, Professor Nyang' Nyong'o, those whom they have mentioned that the best performers. I don't want to really doubt whatever they've said. Yes. But I dare them go for the presidency now. I can assure you they'll be watatoka mkia, they'll be coming the water pool, they'll be the last ones. Why? Because the Kenyan voter, and I repeat, does not go for performance when it comes to that point on time when the vote really matters in terms of voting. Otherwise, we will not be having all these, I don't want to use the word mediocre, but all these non-performing governors. We've had non-performing governors going for their last term. Why couldn't they be voted out in their first term? Right. If the citizenry, if the voters were looking for performance. So from where I sit as a politician, if I want to win a seat, I know what to do. Okay. Performing, I'll do it because it is my duty, it is good for the country. Of course, I promise to perform, so I do performance. But when it comes to the time of looking for the vote, I think performance doesn't count in this country. And I would want to end by saying, I don't think from where I sit, the next 5, 6 general elections coming, the Kenyan voter will start voting based on performance. We started by saying all the presidential candidates are going to the mountain, not because they performed somewhere, not because that is where performance comes, but I think it has been put clearly by aligning yourselves to the kingpins there, by telling them what they want to hear, essentially, not what you're going to do, but simply telling people what they want to hear. And there you are, you become their hero. So unfortunately for Kenya, we are far from the China model, we are very far from the American model, we are very far from any other model. I think it is the former CEO of Safaricom who said, Kenyans have peculiar habits, and those are our peculiar habits when it comes to voting. Yeah, which is pretty unfortunate. Very unfortunate. And that is the reality on the ground. I believe that because you yourself are a politician, have experiences these tendencies from our voters. Now let's shift gears to this issue of no grain, and Kenya is facing an acute shortage of grain after the National Cereals Board has for certain funds because we do not have enough in our reserves. Apparently, according to the report that we got earlier on from Jeff Kirui, it is ironic because just 2 months after Treasury, this comes just 2 months after Treasury CS Ukur Yatani assured the country that there is enough food in our reserves. Honorable Tandaza.
It is very unfortunate that it's now common that in every year or so we have to talk about food shortages. And where did the rain start beating us? Why do we find ourselves there? It is the government policies and priorities that actually do not value the farmer. It is unfortunate that when it comes to buying maize from the farmer, they are offered sometimes as little as, I think there was a time when it went to as low as 1,800 for a 90-kilogram bag. And this is money which they are just given some, they are in the invoice, they don't know when they are going to be paid. But when it comes to importation of maize, it is paid upfront, 4,000 shillings per bag, upfront before it even arrives here. So I blame all this into corruption tricks, and it is unfortunate. It is artificial, it is unfortunate. To me, it just smells a rat. It is a scheme so that those cartels can now get a room to import maize. Remember, for quite some time now, we've not had an importation of maize, and I think people who are working behind the scenes to seriously show that we need to import maize, the strategic grain reserves are empty. But given that farmers, from what I also read yesterday, they still have maize, only that they can't sell because the prices are low. Why can't we just up and buy that maize at a price that the farmer will be encouraged, so that he can actually grow more, and he can then make sure that we no longer have that problem. I would even ask at this point and ask the government, what happened to our highly publicized Galana Kulalu, the issue of, so that it could have ended
the issue of food shortages in this country.
Right.
We know that there are some parts of this country which experience droughts. We are soon going to be called as Kenyans to start contributing, even if it's a shilling, to buy maize for some other Kenyans who are suffering. But surely the government has just to up its game. Okay. This is something that it is known. It is not an emergency. It is not an act of God. We know that we don't encourage our farmers, and when we do, we also discourage them at one point when they have actually the maize. We discourage them from producing because we're not giving them the market price that they can make profits.
Right. Some of them would rather see the maize rot than
exactly. Why should you throw away your hard-earned produce, which has cost so much? You know, people are just discouraged. But I'm hoping, and I keep hoping and being very optimistic that I'm more or less giving up now on the current government with 9 months remaining. The next government will take the issue of food security seriously and eliminate those corrupt cartels who profiteer, especially as the elections come, on maize shortage, sugar shortage, wheat shortage. That is very unfortunate for this country.
Professor Midamba, do you believe something is amiss when it comes to this apparent, or rather our apparent inability to feed ourselves?
Well, Trucker, it is a really unfortunate situation. First, compare with Israel. Rain comes in Israel once a year. Israel has abundance of food, and they export oranges to Kenya and other places. The point is, whatever that is going to happen to us, Kenya is now much better than most of the country in Africa. We are the fourth largest economy in the continent of Africa. We are the most powerful country in East and Central Africa right now. But our growth and development is going to depend largely on agriculture. That's how South Korea was able to transform their country from the third world country to the first world country. That's how Singapore changed. Now Singapore is a small country. They use their technology and decided not to do agriculture, import everything. But the point is, we have enough economists in this country. We have enough technicians in this country. Those people should have projected the need of the country as far as the cereal is concerned, and then be able, if there was abundant food, be able to pay the farmers such that we have contained to allow us to feed our people throughout the year. Now, Honorable Tangasa talked about corruption. Corruption is #1 enemy, and ethnicity is the second enemy of the country. So people need to be accountable right now. Heads need to turn. Who is responsible for what, at what stage? And then we need to really turn this thing around. We need to be very serious, because we have abundance of rain in the country that will sustain us and we'll be able to sell food to other countries as far as Kenya is concerned. So this, for me, is an acceptable situation.
All right. Professor Kagwanja?
Thank you very much. I think we missed the boat at some stage. I reflect on America before the 1930s. And America was a food insufficient country, a very hungry country. I was speaking to a team of KRA mid-level officials this week, and I made the point that the problem with Kenya is simply that we are hacking trees even before we understand the forest. We start by looking at maize or wheat or whatever before we look at the grain policy and how to bring the grain into the market. In America in the 1930s, Franklin Roosevelt focused on the farmer and said, how do I bring the farmer into the marketplace so that you stabilize the American grain market? And what he did is to give price to the grain, that you give the country an offer in terms of the cost of maize and wheat that they cannot reject. So what he did is that he concentrated on building silos, not doing irrigations or anything, just the silos to store food. If a farmer grew maize, where am I going to store it? They built ships and get them floating to the oceans. They built granaries and then paid well for the food. Everybody, all the farmers left in New York, all the executive left in New York and other cities and went to the Middle Belt and they started growing maize and wheat. Today, America is feeding the world. Every refugee camp you go to is made in the United States. Every good grain you are going to eat comes from America and so on. And that is from the 1930s. Policies matter. Let's not hack trees. Let's make policies. That's why importing maize is better, because the cost of imported maize is standard and you know how much it's going to fetch. And when you look at the traders for maize, they are not the farmers or those who do trade with the farmers. They are those who are profiteers. So why don't we stabilize the cost of a grain in Kenya? Say it is 5,000 per bag bought by the government. Then the government can sell the grain to the farmers and others at 2,000 shillings, or the normal price, so that you stabilize the market. But you, in terms of getting it from the farmer, you buy it higher and you sell it to the normal market and you stabilize the market. That is what Roosevelt did. And today, America has never been hungry again. Here, we are concentrating on where do you irrigate, where don't you irrigate, what do you grow? You are now hacking trees. Let's go to policies, let's go to the law, and let's transform our grain market. That's why coffee and tea are the way they are, because the prices are standardized. The president was talking about, the tea now prices coming up because the government has deliberately intervened and it has standardized the prices and is raising them. With the grain, we just need to do that. It's a shame that we are getting our grain from Uganda and Tanzania, which, according to us, are not as developed as we are. Why should Uganda be grain surplus and Kenya is not grain surplus? Why should Tanzania be grain surplus to the point that they are even growing soya beans, they are growing cotton seeds? Whenever you need these rare foods, you buy them from Tanzania. Why not us? Because we have not brought the farmer into the marketplace. The farmer is still there. Okay.
Thank you very much. That is quite interesting. You seemingly are, in the same of the same view as Honorable Tandaza, who feels this is man-made. It is not something that we need to be facing in a country such as Kenya. That is generally, as Professor Midamba said, doing much better than many other countries in Kenya. We should be able to feed ourselves. Now, let's move on. It is an early Christmas on Mashujaa Day, as President Uhuru Kenyatta unveiled a 26 billion stimulus package to accelerate the country's economic growth as he rolled out benefits for Kenyans. As he lifted the night curfew that has been in effect for COVID-19, for 19 months rather, Uhuru on Wednesday announced 13 strategic interventions to lift some burdens from Kenyans ravaged by the COVID-19 pandemic, insisting the time has come for Kenyans to move away from survival to coexistence with the disease. The president outlined robust interventions aimed at putting money in Kenyans pockets, and Uhuru unveiled also an 8 billion shilling plan to expand infrastructure required for the 1 million new students set to join a junior secondary school. Let's take a look.
As of February 2021, 14 million Kenyans had been listed in the dreaded Credit Reference Bureau (CRB), majority of them being young people under the age of 30. This had curtailed their ability to access credit for financing businesses. However, for the next 1 year, Kenyans who owe lenders up to 5 million Kenya shillings can breathe a sigh of relief after President Uhuru Kenyatta directed CRB to delist them.
Borrowers with loans below 5 million and below, listed on the CRB from October 2020 to date, will not have that listing incorporated in their credit reports for the next 12 months ending September 2022.
In an effort to reignite the economy and create new jobs, the president outlined a host of economic measures worth 25 billion Kenya shillings. The fund will be channeled towards various sectors of the economy. Among them, billion Kenya shillings will be appropriated towards competence-based curriculum CBC infrastructure, with a target of constructing 10,000 classrooms for learners to anchor the government's policy on 100% transition from primary to secondary school education. President Kenyatta was categorical on the tendering process, insisting only local contractors will be awarded the construction tenders. 10 billion Kenya shillings will go into Kazi kwa Vijana, an informal employment program to keep unemployed youth at work, which will cover up to 200,000 Kenyans targeted in all Kenyan counties. On energy and petroleum, the president ordered the ministries of petroleum and mining jointly with the National Treasury to develop a framework for the stabilization of petroleum prices so as to cushion Kenyans against the turbulence caused by the volatility in fuel prices by 24th December this year. He further asked the Ministry of Energy to ensure the full implementation of the report of the Presidential Task Force on reviewing the power purchasing agreements that establishes a pathway for the reduction of electricity prices by 30% by 24th December. And the highlight for most Kenyans was the lifting of the dusk to dawn curfew, which has been operational for close to 20 months now.
Imenifurahisha sana ni mambo ya curfew. Sababu hiyo curfew ndio ilikuwa imetudhuru sana, especially kama sisi tukitembea usiku, sababu sisi tunatembea mara mingi, tunatembea usiku, unapata roadblocks ziko mingi, mara tumefungiwa kwa roadblock, mara ukienda hata huwezi pata mahali unaweza kunywa chai. In case ufikisha kuanzia saa 3 ama saa 4 utarara njaa.
Hii curfew ilikuwa imeaffect watu sana juu ya kufunga kazi mapema, na kazi zingine hazistahili kufunga mapema. Kama hii biashara tunafanya makaa, natakiwa iende late kidogo, ya wafanyikazi wale wakitoka kazini wanakuja wakinunua. So tumefurahia sana.
The biggest winners in the lifting of the curfew are hoteliers, transport and logistics operators, restaurant and bar and club owners. Brian George Otieno, KTN News, Nairobi.
Of course, that is a very that's a very important element from the Mashujaa Day celebrations, because it elicited a lot of relief from Kenyans who are hoping to get their livelihoods back on track. And with the curfew being lifted and the hoteliers and bars and restaurant owners able to operate normally, then it's a good thing. Let's start off right there, Honorable Tandaza. What do you think? You're from the coast. You do know the impact of this when it comes to the locals there.
For sure, if there is a package, a Christmas package, or for this matter, a package for all Kenyans, it was the lifting of the curfew. At onset of the curfew, I lost one of my very close relative in Matuga due to beatings by the policemen for flouting curfew rules. And it was very unfortunate because this was a border rider having taken a patient to the hospital. On his way back, he was cornered and beaten and finally lost his life. So the curfew enforcement was just not right from the beginning. But going forward, up to where we had reached, I think it will be also, the downside of it is to the police men and women who've been on the beat enforcing curfew. It had been an extra source of income, so to speak, very unfortunately, but I want to be candid here. We know that the police have been making money out of the curfew, and you just needed to go out or to peep outside the window at midnight or at 1. People will be moving right, left, and center. For those who have money, of course, they had known that for this particular road block, wale wanachukua 100, the next one, no, they don't take 100, so make sure you have your 200, and that people operate like that. But the unfortunate bit is the ordinary mwananchi who was not able now
to look for his or her daily bread based on the curfew restrictions. You can imagine tricks, the kind of ordinary businessmen who will travel overnight between Mombasa and Nairobi for merchandise. They will travel overnight. In the morning they're in Nairobi, go to Kikomba or somewhere else, Sicily, pick their wares, travel again in the evening, the next day they're in Mombasa and do their business. Likewise, those from Nairobi picking goods in Mombasa and back. But now it had become so expensive because now to do that kind of movement, you literally needed 4 days because you'll travel during the day. In the evening, of course, there is no business, there is curfew, shops are closed. The following day, you do shopping. In the evening, you cannot travel back because of the curfew. You have to travel the following day. So basically, people lost livelihoods. They have been losing livelihoods. And I'm one of those who have always said that the curfew had outlived its purposefulness. And in any case, there was no scientific research or paper which had said that the COVID-19 travels faster or it infects faster between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. If somebody was to transmit it, what stops that person doing it before 10 p.m., you see? So to me, it was, it didn't give any logic, make any sense at all, maintaining it.
Right.
Otherwise, it is a good thing. About the other stimulus packages, really, from where I sit, I don't think they're going to make a difference.
Oh, really?
8 billion shillings to construct 10,000 classrooms. Remember, on the onset of the COVID-19, for the Parliament gave money to the Minister of Education for infrastructure. Well, anybody can go down and do assessment and take stock of what happened in terms of the additional classrooms, the additional furniture that was promised. It is just not there. Now another 8 billion shillings. We are yet to see it. But as late as yesterday, I had a question on the floor of the House, specifically addressing the CS education on matters, the CBC, the implementation status, and in matters infrastructure. Because even without COVID, we still didn't have enough classrooms. We didn't have enough furniture. Even without COVID, already with 100% transition, so much was to be done. But unfortunately, when such monies are appropriated to the CS or to the ministry, in terms of implementation becomes very wanting. And I think there are no structures per se to actually take that money down to where it is required most. Okay. With the members of Parliament, of course, our mandate with the CDF fund, of course, we have proposals, we are doing the same classrooms, but it is not enough. How much I wish that the 8 billion will come with the proper channels and infrastructure for it to actually complement what we are doing. Okay. Now, I'd like Professor Midamba to tell us what he feels about the rollouts, the declarations that were made, the call for 10,000 new classes to actually, help prepare for the junior secondary and new students that will be joining by 2023. And there's so many needs of Kenyans that have been perhaps met by the better fortunes brought on by the lifting of the curfew.
Thank you, Trick. I thought I like listening to good speeches, but I believe this was one of the best substantive speech the president gave. He was focused, it was full of substance, and I think we can say the offering is not enough, but a really good beginning for where we need to go. Lifting the curfew at appropriate time was important, but we need to know that Kenya is one of the countries in Africa that has been able to effectively manage COVID-19 situation. There was a period of time when there were excesses in terms of police brutality, but that over the period of time were checked. Again, the vast number of police are able, orderly, an element within that police system that are caught up with the corruption. And corruption seems to move at every opportunity that is created. And therefore, they tarnish the name of the good name of the force and the kind of work they're doing. Let me talk just briefly about competence-based curriculum. This is an excellent move on behalf of the country, such that young men and women who are growing up, coming up to primary school, to secondary school, to higher education, will have substance instead of exams focus that we have had for a long time in this country. And I'm used to that because all my children have gone to school in a Jewish neighborhood in America. And competency-based require both the parents and the teachers to work together in order to mold the child to their future endeavor, so that putting a significant resource in that area will help really uplift the base of the country. Those that are depressed, those that are poor, education, we know, is the only way, and that will help this country leapfrog like South Korea and Singapore. In the area of youth area, and I think Kenyans are right now making a lot of promises. But
we have a problem with your audio, Professor Midamba, so we're going to give this opportunity to Professor Kagwanja as we sort that out shortly. Professor Kagwanja, funds have been pumped into agricultural subsectors. We've had a call for new classrooms, a directive rather, and of course there's the lifting of the curfew. What is your reaction to these moves?
I think it is important, and I must reiterate, the President's speech was one of the best that I've heard in terms of intervening at the right time. I think also the President is listening to the calls of the people that they need money in their pockets. This presidency of Uhuru Kenyatta have done so much well in terms of huge infrastructural projects. He would be the Roosevelt of Kenya, who opened all these big things in America, the big Hoover Dams, the Mississippi Valley Development Authority and all that. Huge dams. But in our times, these big projects have not reflected the huge employment that would come, I guess because of the technological age in which we are, where small labor is needed. So putting money into people's pocket has been the major issue. And I think all these projects we've talked about are going to put money into people's pocket, because that money is going to trickle down. It's not going to one major infrastructural project like the Standard Gauge Railway or the overpass in Nairobi. This is important, and added also to the issue of lifting of the curfew, because 75% of our people live in the informal economy. And therefore, when you focus on the formal economy, two things happen. One, you don't get taxation, because the 75% of the population is not being taxed, because it doesn't have income. Two, the country cannot grow because this 75% is static. So you are depending on 25%, and that's very risky. So when you put money into the 75%, the task base expands, and people are able to live because they have money, and the economy is robust and vibrant. Now, so what the President has done is to shift gears, and now the focus is on 75% of the population. I'm sure the coming 50th president or the new government will now have to focus on the 75%. The focus has been in the past on the 25%. Yes, these are Safaricom, these are equities and the big money. They contribute a lot to the economy. But when we are talking about Kenya, the 75% need to be focused on. If you transform each of the 75% to the equity, or you have the proportionate share of money circulating here, then you have a mid-level economy in Kenya. And that is what we have not done. Obviously, people have taken to comparing the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta and that of President Mwai Kibaki. President Mwai Kibaki had no option but to focus on the 75%, because for many decades they had been the people who had not had the money. So he started from below, the 75%. And that's why you hear this Hasura Nation and the policies that now Raila Odinga is coming with are now focusing on this 75% with different degrees of populism and reality and practicality. But whatever is going to happen, the next government will focus on the 75% as the new taxpayers in the Republic of Kenya.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's shift gears to an ongoing rather a developing story, ongoing situation with Kenya and Somalia, both engaged in a bit of chest thumping for sovereignty purposes, and of course this has to do with Kenya-Somalia maritime route. President Uhuru Kenyatta has committed to protecting Kenya's territorial integrity, vowing not even an inch of the country's geographical area will be lost to aggressors. He was speaking during celebrations during the Mashujaa Day celebrations in Kirinyaga on Wednesday. He noted that Kenya has on many occasions since attaining independence experienced territorial aggressions to the sanctity of the country's borders. And of course, the message of our founding fathers is what he says, that and to these aggressors was simple: not an inch less, not an inch more. And this is the message that must reverberate across the collective quarters that are bent on annexing any part of the territory known as the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Tandaza, your reaction?
Spot on. For this one, His Excellency, the President of Kenya, was spot on. And of course, he had to be spot on. He saw by the Constitution of the Republic to take care of our borders, you see. And as he was swearing to uphold the Constitution, he was holding the Bible for that matter. So this is even an oath he took before God. And that is what is expected of him. We would not expect our president, for that matter, to cede even a millimeter of our country, because that will be going against the Constitution. About how we got ourselves there, it's another story. But if it's about the Mashujaa Declaration, which is said on that, he has the support of every Kenyan. But at the end of the day, we still need to coexist peacefully. Any disruption in terms of war, God forbid, if it has to reach there, it will have far-reaching consequences to this country, to the ordinary Kenyan. Remember, we've been having, it is not our choice that we have Somalia as our neighbor. Remember, we have actually a good number of Kenyan Somalis here, and they do a lot of business. Kenyans do a lot of business with the Somalia. So it is only my hope that with the time, for sure we cannot cede an inch, but an amicable solution, a diplomatic solution, should prevail on this matter so that we coexist, so that we do business. And it is every Kenyan hope that a stable Somalia is also a stable Kenya. So my prayers are that these countries should be able to solve these matters on diplomatically, and we coexist.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. And we are, after all, sisters and brothers. Now, Professor Midamba, what's your take on the hard stance that the President has taken?
Thank you, Trek. I quite agree with what Honorable Tangasa just enumerated. And let me give Kenya just a glimpse of the global picture. Right now, Kenya GDP is twice that of North Korea. North Korea growth rate is 0. Kenya is moving at hovering 6 and above. Now, when we look at how do we use our resources, The ultimate responsibility of the president is to protect the national integrity of this country and also to move our people to a better place. A better place means better, upper income, middle income, such that every single Kenyan can be able to produce and also enjoy the offering of what this country can get. But if you spend all your money on the hardware, defense hardware and everything, and then you become like the situation that Ethiopia is doing. So my point, and I said this last time, is the president has right to declare and make the statement that he did. Famajo, for a short time, chest thumping, was able to do that because we fumbled. But ultimately, we need to go back to 1967 when President Kaunda, under the umbrella of OAU, was able to assist the dispute between Somalia and Kenya and have a resolution, peaceful resolution. We need to turn to diplomacy. We need to use the framework of AU right now and bring this matter to a conclusion. But Somalia or anybody should never expect to have an inch of Kenyan soil because the point where we have reached, and I said last time, that we need to leave things alone back to the colonial demarcation. Anytime Somalia move, will create a problem for Kenya, and therefore we don't want to get and be broiled into conflict that will bring about destruction of endless destruction to Somalia and also to Kenya, and stop our growth trajectory the way we have it right now. Okay. So peaceful coexistence is the way to go.
Is key. Professor Kagwanja?
Well, I think Kenya and Somalia are joined at the hip. Previously, we shared the border. Today, we share a population. Therefore, it's good for Kenya and Somalia to sit down and talk about their common border. I'm saying this because the ruling from the ICJ was the worst you can get from any international court. And I wrote to that extent on Sunday. Why? Kenya has two options. One, to insist no inch less, no inch more from the Somali side, or no inch less, no inch more from the Tanzanian side. The court insisted on this equidistance, meaning going south. Meaning, if that line was to be allowed to go, it would go and it would detach the South African line somewhere near the South Pole. So it is giving Somalia all the territories in the Indian Ocean. If you push that line, because they were so myopic, they just look at Kenya. Just draw that equidistant line the way it is drawn by the court, and it will go down to that part. Now, Kenya has another option, to leave Somalia alone and go to that court again and file a case against Tanzania on our common border so that you apply the same equidistance. What would that mean? We will take the idea of the island of Zanzibar, of Pemba, in Zanzibar. And therefore, Tanzania will also have to go and file a similar case against Mozambique so that the line go equidistant. And now Mozambique will have to tell South Africa our border has to now go south. So it is basically affecting the whole Indian Ocean region, and that's why Kenya should ignore that court ruling, because it is the most, unprofessional, the most partisan, and the most, it is really a quackish kind of a whatever, because you are instigating conflict in the region. I am sure the Somalis are listening. Now, that equidistant line will require Kenya to basically take Tanzania to court in order to have an equidistant line. It will require Tanzania to go to court to take Mozambique to have the equidistant line, and the same case with Mozambique and South Africa. Why do you need that? Because you are favoring one country, just because it's your country and you are the judge in a big court, and you are influencing your colleagues who have no idea about what Africa is. The only thing they know is the Caspian Sea, and in the Caspian Sea, all lines are equidistant, because this is an inland sea, and every country needs to have a piece of land. I mean, Caspian Sea is very different from Indian Ocean. This is an ocean. So that's the argument that Kenya and Somalia need to sit down, because the two are joined at the hip, and our future and our destiny are intertwined, and we cannot rely on the judgment of a very unprofessional court.
Okay, and on that note, I'd like to wind up the discussion. That is Professor Peter Gagwanja.